loves, this is Ro. Welcome back to my channel. It is full swing winter snowstorm going on outside, which is awesome because it allows me to make videos because my office is closed today, but it is freezing if you can't tell from the turtleneck sweater and the cap. I think I look cute, like a snow bunny. So today I want to tell you a crazy true story about a man who was sentenced to life but appealed that because he died and then came back to life. Not kidding, not kidding. So if you're interested in that story, keep watching. I saw this story on the place where I get all of my news, Facebook. It was an article that was linked by my friend, attorney Sean Hopwood, and he was just kind of like, wow. So the title, the headline of this article was, "A prisoner who briefly died argues that he's served his life sentence." So I have to say, that's kind of genius. I mean, I'll tell you in a second if he even won his appeal, but it's kind of a genius argument if you ask me. Like, I was sentenced to life, I died, I was resuscitated, so I served my life sentence. Do you think that that is actually legitimate? Did that hold up in the court of law? Let me tell you the whole background story and stay to the end, and I'll let you know if his argument won, if the judge was like, you're right, or if the judge was like, good try. So the prisoner was named Benjamin Schreiber. Mr. Schreiber is 66 years old. Back in 1996, he was sentenced to life without parole in Iowa State for taking somebody's life by hitting them with the handle of an axe. Throughout these years that he's been inside, he's filed a bunch of appeals. They've all been unsuccessful. So back in 2015, he suffered a kidney infection. He was not treated properly through medical, which we all know is common inside of prison, and his body went septic, meaning the infection traveled through his blood. And during this septic process, at one point he had passed out. He was considered legally dead. Well, even though he had a DNR, which means do not resuscitate, he was still brought back to life. And so he survived the odds. He was brought back, his heart started beating again, and he went on his life in prison. And he filed an appeal in 2018 saying that because he died, he physically died, his heart stopped beating, then his natural life sentence was over. He served his life sentence because his life was over and he came back to life. The hospital called Mr. Schreiber's brother, his next of kin, I guess that's the person he had his contact information for if anything had happened to him. And he said that you are allowed to give my brother, you're allowed to give Mr. Schreiber, the inmate, anything to help his pain. You're allowed to give him medication, but if anything progresses, he chooses not to be resuscitated. And so the disease progressed, he flatlined on the table, and they wound up resuscitating him against his and his brother's wishes. So Mr. Schreiber went to court. He filed an appeal in 2018 stating that, because he died technically on the table because he flatlined, that his natural life sentence has expired. He said he died, right? His natural life during the time within the sentence he was given was done. He died. It expired. Now he was brought back against his own wishes, which he's not, for some reason, choosing to fight that, choosing not to argue that and suing for that instead, that medical malpractice claim. Instead, he's choosing to go this other route where he's choosing to appeal his life sentence, which again, I think is a pretty smart argument. Not saying that it should happen, not saying that he should get away with it, but I think from his perspective, like, I don't know, I think that's a really smart thought. He died, right? He got life. Did those two go together? Should he come home? I don't think he should come home. That's not what I'm saying. I think it's smart that he argued this. So he wrote up the appeal and he went in front of a judge in Iowa. The judge's name was Judge Porterfield. Because life is not determined, it's not defined in the state code because nobody ever questioned what life meant before, then it has to be perceived in its plain definition, which in this case they stated was the sentence was that Mr. Schreiber must spend the rest of his natural life in prison, whether that be resuscitated or not. This is the life that he was given. He was born once as an infant. died or not, this is still his life. He didn't die, get reincarnated, come back in a different life. So the judge is saying the definition of life is his one life on this planet. He was blessed to get a second lease on life, to get a second chance on life after being resuscitated, but good try, buddy, but you gotta go back to jail. So I'm gonna read the quote from the judge. He said, "We do not find his argument persuasive. Judges find it unlikely that the legislature would have wanted to set criminal defendants free whenever medical procedures during their incarceration lead to their resuscitation by medical professionals." And Mr. Schreiber wasn't the first inmate to ever make this plea, to ever appeal. What? There were more people that did this? Oh my God. Jerry Rosenberg was an inmate out of New York State who was there because he took the lives of 2 police officers. He argued in 1988 that his life sentence was expired because his heart stopped during a medical procedure, during surgery. So he said that he should get out too because his life sentence was over. The judge in Mr. Rosenberg's case said, you didn't legally die because your presence in this courtroom right now, you're in front of me right now, so buddy, you're alive, but good try. Then there's this university professor who writes extensively about criminal law. Her name is Eve Bensky Primus. She's out of the University of Michigan, and she actually wrote that she's surprised that this argument hasn't been used more often in the past. She said if this could actually be an argument, a valid argument, this would create a whole host of problems, not just for the criminal justice system and lifers, but also for insurance and inheritance reasons. Like, this could create, think about the endless possibilities that this could create, the increase of crimes around this, people trying to like stage their own death, fake their own death. Just strangle me enough for me to pass out, but don't kill me. Like, what? Eve and a professor from Harvard University, Glenn Cohen, who studies medical ethics and law, states that Mr. Schreiber's argument was clever, but it never stood a chance. Mr. Cohen says, it equivocates, your girl can't ever pronounce big words. It equivocates on what life and death means for the purposes of criminal law. And then he said the definition of life also is used for organ donation and those types of things. So if he wants to say that his life is over, should they take his organs from him while he's alive? Ew, gross, but ooh, good point. He probably shouldn't consider himself dead for the purposes of serving a life sentence if he also wants to keep his eyes and his liver and his kidneys, etc., etc., etc. Do you know that I just learned last week that you could donate your skin when you die? That's really cool. Like to burn victims and stuff. I didn't know that. I thought it was just like organs. Pretty cool. Anyhow, so this brought up a lot of thoughts for me. For example, imagine if this guy won this case and the precedent it would set. You would have people on the inside, I think, who would stage overdoses, who would try to get their friends to do something to them, to hurt them. Like, what if you could get a guy on death row or another lifer who feels like he has nothing to lose, like he has multiple life sentences, he knows he's never coming home. You could pay him off to kill you, but just enough to be resuscitated. How many people would like accidentally hurt themselves because they were trying to die, be resuscitated, and then be relieved of their life sentence? Like, obviously the judges could not let this go through, although it was clever, but just a dead in the water argument. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm so curious what your thoughts are though. Like, when is life over? Does this guy have a valued argument? Do you think that if somebody's heart stops or they're legally pronounced dead, but then they're resuscitated and they come back to life, do you think that they should be relieved of their life sentence? Did that expire? What are your thoughts? What's your legal argument behind that? I'd love to get the conversation going in the comments below. Think about the people who have 30 years, the old law inmates that get out after 30 years, because that is a quote unquote life sentence under old law. Should that be considered life? In different countries, they have much less time considered life. It might be like 10 years or something. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but very, very, very different definitions of life sentences. So I'm curious what your thoughts are for life sentences. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this article and Mr. Schreiber and Mr. Rosenberg, and I'm not saying the right names, but the people who were clever enough to try to argue this point. Do you think it was smart? Let me know in the comments below. If you're not subscribed, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're trying to reach 10K in 2019 before the end of it. Before January 1st, 2020, we will have 10,000. So if you're not subscribed, you can help me get there just by clicking that subscribe button. And if you want to be notified every single time I post a new video or I go live, I'm doing a lot more live videos throughout the month of December for our Vlogmas. Make sure that you ding that little notification bell. And you could do me a huge favor just by clicking like, so YouTube knows to share this content with everybody who needs to see it. You guys keep staying strong, keep loving strong, keep supporting one another through this journey, because you're one day closer to it all being behind you. Lord knows me and my life are too. We don't need him to die on any operating tables or at the prison or anything like that for us to get this resolved. Lots of love from my heart and Adam's heart to all of yours. I'll see you, beautiful ladies and gentlemen, in the next one. Bye, guys.